Cherry, the Frog Bride from 50 Famous Fairy Tales. There was once an old woman who had an only daughter called Cherry because she liked cherries better than any other kind of food. Now, Cherry's mother had no garden, no money to buy cherries for her daughter. The only way she could get the fruit was by going to the neighboring nunnery and begging some from the nuns. She dared not let her daughter go out by herself, as she was so beautiful that the first man who saw her would surely carry her off. Now it happened that the abbess in charge of the nunnery was fond of cherries as the girl. When the abbess found out how much her fine fruit was going to Cherry, she was very angry and promised herself to make trouble for the girl at the next chance she got. One day, three wandering princes came to the town where Cherry and her mother lived and saw the fair maiden standing at the window, combing her beautiful long hair. Each of the three princes fell deeply in love with her at first sight. "The girl shall be my bride," said all three, all in one voice, and then turning on each other in a jealous anger, they began to fight for the beautiful unknown maiden. The abbess, hearing the uproar, came to the gate. On learning that Cherry was the cause of the battle, her old anger against the girl broke forth, and in a fit of rage the abbess wished Cherry turned into an ugly frog that would sit under a bridge at the end of the world. The abbess had no sooner uttered these words than poor Cherry became a frog and vanished. Now the three princes had nothing to fight for, so sheathing their swords again, they went on toward their father's home. Meanwhile, their father, the king, had grown old and ill-fitted for the business of reigning. He thought of giving up his kingdom, but could not decide to which son it should go. This was the point that the fatherly heart could not settle, for he loved all his sons alike. "My dear children," he said, "I am growing old, and should like to give up my kingdom, but I do not know which of you to choose as an heir, for I love all three of you. Besides, I wish to give the cleverest and best of you the one for my people to be their king. I have decided to give you three trials, and the one who accomplishes all three shall have the kingdom. The first task is to find 100 yards of cloth so fine I can draw it through my golden ring." The princes promised to do their best, and they all set out on the search. The two eldest brothers took many coaches and servants to bring home the beautiful material, but the youngest went just on foot. The three started off together, but soon came to a place where the roads branched off into several lanes. Two roads ran through the smiling meadows and the smooth paths and shady gloves, but the third looked very dreary and barren. The two eldest brothers chose pleasant ways, but the youngest turned and went whistling down the road that was quite dreary. The eldest brothers bought all fine pieces of cloth they saw, and soon the coaches and horses were bent under the burdens. The youngest prince, on the other hand, journeyed on for many a day, and he found no place to buy but 1 yard of cloth. His heart sank, and with every mile he grew more and more sorrowful. At last he came to a bridge, and there he sat down to rest and sigh over his bad luck. An ugly-looking frog popped its head up in the water and asked him what was troubling him. The prince said sharply, "Silly frog, you cannot help me." "Who told you so?" said the frog. "Tell me what ails you." After a while the prince told the story. "I will help you," said the frog. It jumped into the stream and soon returned, dragging a small piece of linen. It was no bigger than one's hand, and by no means the cleanest cloth in the world. However, there was that the prince was told to take the cloth with him. He didn't want such a dirty-looking cloth, but still there was something in the frog's voice that pleased him, and he thought to himself, "Well, it's better than nothing." So he picked it up and put it in his pocket and thanked the frog and started home. The father of the prince went heavier. The farther the prince went, the heavier his pocket grew. He trudged into the courtyard at the same time his brothers came dashing up their horses and coaches, all heavily laden. The old king was very glad to see his children, and pulled off his ring to determine who had done the best. In all the stock the two elder brothers had bought, not one piece, a tenth the part, would go through the ring. The youngest brother reached in his pocket, and much to his surprise, came a piece of cloth, a white, soft cloth, 1,000 times more beautiful than any of the brothers had seen. It was so fine it passed with ease through the ring. Indeed, two such pieces readily had gone through together. The king embraced the lucky youth and told his servants to throw the coarse linen into the sea, and said to his children, "Now you must have a second task that I have set for you. Bring me a little dog, so small it will lie in a nutshell." The three princes were more than a little frightened to attempt such a task, but they all longed for the crown, so they set off on their travels. At the crossroads they parted again. The youngest chose the old dreary road, while his brothers chose the smooth, fine roads. The youngest prince went on, finding not even one dog until he came to the bridge. He had scarcely seated himself when his old friend, the frog, sat down beside him and croaked, "What is the matter?" This time the prince had no doubt of the frog's power, and therefore told it what he wanted. "It shall be done for you," said the frog, diving into the stream, and it soon returned with a hazelnut laid in it at the prince's feet, and he told it to take him home with him. The prince picked up the nut and went his way, well pleased. This time the brothers reached home before him, and they had brought many little pretty dogs. The old king, willing to help them all they could, sent for a large walnut shell and tried to put each dog into it. One, one stuck fast with its hind foot out, while the other head would not go in. A third one's forefoot hung out, and the fourth could not get its tail into the shell. In short, none was able to fit into this new kind of kennel. When the dogs had been tried, the youngest prince gave his father a dutiful bow and gave him the hazelnut, begging him to crack it very carefully. The moment that this was done, a beautiful little dog ran out upon the king's hand, wagged its tail, and fondled its new master, and to the delight of the whole court turned about and barked at the other little beasts in a graceful manner. The joy of everyone was great, and the old king again embraced his lucky son and told the people to drown all the other dogs in the sea. He said to his children, "Dear sons, your weightiest tasks are over now. Listen to my last wish. Whoever brings home the fairest lady will have my throne." The prizes were so tempting that the princes wasted no time in setting to work, each on his own way. The youngest was not in good spirits, as he was the last time. He thought to himself, "The old frog has been able to do a great deal, but all its power can do nothing more for me now. Where it would find a fair maiden for me, better still, a fairer maiden than has ever been seen at my father's court." Meanwhile he went on, and sighed with a heavy heart as he sat down beside a bridge. "Ah, frog," he said, "this time you could do me no good." "Never mind," croaked the frog, "only tell me what is the matter now." Then the prince told his old friend all his trouble. "Start back home," said the frog. "The fair maiden will follow, but take care not to laugh at whatever may happen." Then, as before, it sprang into the water and out of sight. The prince sighed. This time he had little trust in the frog's word. However, he started for home. He had not gone far when he heard a noise behind him, and looking around he saw 6 large water rats dragging a large pumpkin as if it were a coach. On the box sat an old toad as a coachman, behind 2 little tadpoles as footmen. Within the coach sat his friend, the frog, rather ugly, but with something of a graceful air. The prince was so lost in his own thoughts that he had scarcely looked at the coach, much less laughed at it. The coach passed on and soon turned a corner and was hidden from sight. The prince was astonished on turning the corner himself to find a handsome coach with 6 black horses standing there, a coachman in a gay livery. Within the coach was the most beautiful lady he had ever seen. He recognized her at once as fair Cherry, whom he loved. As he came up, the servants opened the coach door, and he was invited to seat himself with the beautiful lady. They soon came to his father's city, and his brothers, with of fair ladies, had already assembled. As soon as Cherry was seen, the court gave her the crown of beauty, and the delighted father embraced the youngest son and named him heir, and ordered all the other ladies sent away. Then the youngest prince married Cherry and lived long and happily with her, and indeed lives with her as if he is still not dead.